2.5 years ago, I left my home and family in Australia and moved with my fiancé to Uruguay. I started sharing pieces of my journey online on YouTube and TikTok, and I've been surprised by some of the reactions I've received. My goal was always to share my honest journey moving abroad. I didn't want to move to South America and then only show myself at the beach, drinking mate and smiling with my friends, because that is only a fraction of my life. And there are enough fake highlight reels on social media without me adding to it. So here is a little taste of my truth. Moving across the world is never an easy process, but arriving 2 weeks before the pandemic definitely didn't help. And while things seem to be slowly fading into a distant memory, the truth is you never know what will happen in the future. And moving to a new country where you have very limited support doesn't make these unexpected world events any easier. The first few months and year, if I'm honest, were incredibly lonely, and it was a real challenge to find a sense of community in a country with such a small population, especially in a time when many group and community events had been cancelled. We also faced challenges trying to adapt to a complete new structure of society. In terms of living situations, we've now lived in 3 different homes, and with each move, we thought we were solving a problem and escaping from a place we didn't love, only to find that things were never quite as simple as they appeared. We were incredibly lucky to have found our first apartment thanks to some family help. But to be honest, the only redeemable feature of this tiny apartment was its location. My walks along La Rambla or watching the sunrise and all these beautiful palm trees were probably the only thing that kept me sane that first year during deep pandemic. And then when our contract was up and it was time to move on to bigger and better things, we realized just how difficult it was to find an apartment and get approved as foreigners. We finally found this place in 𝒇𝒊𝒍𝒎𝒅 and it seemed perfect, and we were approved. However, shortly after, we realized that things are never quite as perfect as they appear. Then, last year, we finally bought our dream car after saving up forever, only to have it break down many times and to have mechanics just not show up or lie to our faces and take our money without fixing the problem. Out in town, I've tripped over the broken sidewalks, missed buses, and been absolutely terrified by the drivers of Montevideo. I was legally required to have a translator at my own wedding, and he showed up wearing a hoodie. I have cried more times than I can count from homesickness and missed the birth of my second niece and my best friend's first baby. We've also been struggling with finances. We've struggled to pay rent and have lived week to week for as long as I can remember. We've been behind on bills for months, to the point where we needed to ask our parents to lend us money, and have only just now dug our way out of this hole. We have struggled for 2 years to get a real job here in Uruguay while living off of my unstable and very unconventional type of income, at least as far as the traditional Uruguayan setup is concerned. I'm also still struggling to learn the language even 2 years later. It turns out it's not as easy as just moving somewhere and immersing in the language. It still takes daily practice, and with working so hard just to make ends meet, I simply did not have the time. It makes me nervous to say some of this online because people have criticized me for any type of negative comment or complaint about the country. Every time I point out something I don't like or that I wish would change, I am labeled as a complainer or told to go back where I came from. Uruguay is far from a perfect utopia, and at least most of the locals know this. Yet hearing a foreigner share some of this online tends to bring out the defensiveness in a lot of locals. I never said I disliked the country or that I wanted to become a mini clone of the United States. Honestly, that sounds like a nightmare. I don't even want Uruguay to become exactly like Australia. There are so many things I love about this small little country. Most people online love to talk about the free education and healthcare, but honestly, it goes so much deeper than that. One simple example is the electric public buses, with plans to further develop this industry into the future. This country is also incredibly progressive, especially if you compare it to the United States. Women and LGBTQ groups have so many more rights here compared to many countries around the world, and this is not something that I take lightly. And I simply could not live in a country where progress seemed to be reversed. On top of this, there is a great sense of community here. People are often seen in groups just sitting on the grass, in parks, on beaches, walking slowly, or spending hours in cafes. To me, from growing up in Australia, this is nothing too crazy, but from talking to some friends from the United States, I know that some of this behavior would actually be considered loitering in certain parts of their country, which to me is just completely crazy. Another thing I love about Uruguay are the markets. Each little neighborhood have these cute little markets on one day every week. And while farmers markets exist in Australia and in the United States, and I'm sure many other countries around the world, they tend to be a little bit more commercialized from what I've seen, with higher prices and more of a focus on farm to table or organic produce. Whereas here, regular people just come with a rug, lay it out on the street, and sell whatever tiny little trinkets they can find in their home. Not all of it is the best quality, but honestly, that is half the fun. So despite being misunderstood, misheard, or having my comments taken out of context and receiving a significant amount of negative feedback, I don't regret sharing what I said. Those videos were never intended for Uruguayans in the first place. I made these videos and this channel to help other people like me who are considering moving here, to learn more about the country and what to expect, and make an informed decision as to whether or not this was the country for them. So 2.5 years later, I've now made some of the closest friends of my entire life. I've even started my dream business here and am learning something new every single day. In other words, I am now thriving in an environment that was once so foreign to me. Of course, there are still things that I don't know, and I'm not sure that I'm ever going to fully understand this country. But we've definitely made progress in adjusting to this slower pace of life and also just slowly learning how things are done here. All of this to say, if you've ever considered moving abroad, whether that's to Uruguay or some other country, just know that there will be times where you feel like you have no idea what's going on, where you don't understand what people are saying, where you need to go, or what you're supposed to be doing. There will also be times where you feel like you've made a mistake or where the loneliness starts to creep in. But of course, like most things, the positives completely outweigh the negatives. Moving here was one of the best decisions of my life, and now and for the foreseeable future, Uruguay is my home, and I love it here.
La 𝒖𝒔𝒊𝒄 Y yo estoy pendiente a ti, de que tú llegaste a mí. Me tienes loco como tú te mueves. Yo no sé si yo te atrevo.